Joining me now is President of the Kurdish Lobby Australia, Aziz Bowman, for more on this. Aziz, thanks very much for your time. Have you spoken to anyone over there in the north of Syria about the situation right now?
Yes, this morning I spoke to a few people on both sides of the border.
What can you tell us about what's happening from what you've heard?
Well, people feel terrorized. They feel totally betrayed by one man, namely the President of the United States, Donald Trump. But they don't feel betrayed by the United States or American people, I should say. In fact, the support, it appears, that has been quite overwhelming. But they are very much frightened. They don't know how long they will live. Bomb can drop on their homes any time. And one of the persons I spoke to said the school next door had been hit, and because of the proximity, they had just left everything behind and taken refuge further south.
So the school was hit. Do you know if children were there at the time?
No, they didn't mention that the children were there. When I say it was hit, but wasn't sort of totally destroyed or collapsed or anything. It was just hit by some weapons. He couldn't quite tell me what it was.
Right, so the sense there amongst the community is that they don't stand much of a chance with Turkey rolling in and Russian support as well.
Well, that's what it is. They know Turkey is NATO's second largest country. It has got American jet fighters, it's got German tanks, and it's got French artillery. And all the people have in West Kurdistan or northern Syria are very lightly armed militia. They really don't have much of a chance, but they seem to be determined to put up stiff resistance and, if possible, repel Turkish aggression.
You were quoted this morning as calling this a potential bloodbath. Is there any risk of concern that there could shift towards something verging on genocide?
Not genocide, but a massacre is very, very likely. Plus, you know, we would expect that there will be around 100 or over 100,000 refugees could be the result, plus 1 million internally displaced people. Because a couple of villages have already, or towns on the border, have already been vacated. All residents have left the towns out of the field, as it was one of the first towns that was attacked by Turkish Air Force.
Scott Morrison is not willing to criticise what Donald Trump's done. He's focusing on Turkey, saying that's the country that's conducting this operation or invasion. What's your response to that?
Well, he is right in saying that Turkey is conducting this operation, but Turkey wouldn't do it if President Erdogan did not get the green light from Donald Trump. There is no way in the world would he have started this campaign without very, very clear signal from Donald Trump. I just want to point out that this will have a butterfly effect. Enemies of freedom around the world will now conclude that, well, America cannot be trusted. When the going gets tough, they will simply pack up and go, if not run. On the other hand, the friends of the United States, the allies of the United States, I think will be rightly asking themselves, what is the value of an alliance with the United States if they can just pack up and go? And as Australians, I think we should ask ourselves as well, what is the value of this defense treaty we have with the United States if Donald Trump can just abrogate it or cancel it on a whim? So we need to ask ourselves that question as well.
I mean, I guess you've got a very different situation in terms of a formal alliance versus Kurdish assistance and a sort of partnership here. But Turkey, as well, is justifying this in part as is by pointing out the PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, is a terrorist organisation according to the US and Australian governments, and it has a presence here. That does complicate it, doesn't it?
Well, not really. The situation is very simple. PKK, there's no evidence that PKK is there against the will of the people. The main forces there is SDF. It's YPG-dominated SDF, Syrian Democratic Forces. But let me remind you that Not one, but 3 Belgian courts, including the highest court in the land, have ruled that PKK is not a terrorist organization. It operates as a non-state party to a military conflict inside Turkey and nowhere else. So as I see it over here, that really Turkish state is engaged in terrorism. It is terrorizing Kurdish people, and as such it should be properly called a terrorist state.
You want the government to send a message to Turkey. I suppose it's done that, but also take action through the UN. Is there any real hope that will change anything?
Not really, but I'm pleased that Scott Morrison even said what he has so far said. That was somewhat more than what I had expected. But it should do. It should take the matter to UN General Assembly. It should join the European countries that have taken the matter to, or are talking about taking the matter to, the Security Council. It is a naked aggression by one UN member state against another UN member state. I mean, the whole purpose of the UN would think to prevent wars between member states. And yes, Scott Morrison should do that. But I'm more focused on people's power. I believe people can be far more powerful in effecting change, in stopping Erdogan by boycotting Turkish goods and services, especially tourism. If enough people boycott products made in Turkey, services provided by Turkey, and decide not to visit Turkey, or at least consider alternatives, I believe that will send a much, much stronger message than Scott Morrison can.
That's your call to Australians, is it? To not visit Turkey, Turkish-made products?
Yes, I believe that is a very, very powerful weapon at the hands of ordinary people, ordinary Australians. Call it people power or consumer power or whatever you like to call it. But I believe that's a very, very effective way of restraining and even stopping Erdogan from this misadventure that will create
as is a few years ago.
Refugees.
Okay. Sorry, and I just wanted to mention those refugees, though, in Syria. We had a situation a few years ago where the Abbott government allowed a one-off intake of 13,000 Syrians. Are you pushing for the government to have a similar allotment of Kurds, if they are managing to flee, that they could perhaps come to Australia after an extra one-off intake?
Well, I haven't, to be honest, I haven't given that much thought. But my focus, my intention, my calls are on preventing that from happening, preventing refugees leaving their homes and their countries. The focus should be on prevention rather than, taking 10, 20,000 people in. What will happen to the other 80, 90, 100,000 refugees? So prevention is always better than the cure, I believe. But let us face it, that this story of terrorism or PKK, it's just an excuse for an invasion. The ultimate purpose is really ethnic cleansing, of cleansing the area of the Kurdish people. There is a historical Turkish phobia, to great fear of the Kurds, that the Kurds will either form an independent country or will gain an international recognition. And that is the fear that is driving Erdogan and a lot of other people inside Turkey. Turkish people these days do not have
when you
much
say
of
that,
voice.
I know you said before you didn't believe this was risking descending into genocide, but I mean, ethnic cleansing for some people could be considered a synonym. You believe that will be targeting civilians and they'll be killed in some sort of mass scale? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they will be forced out of their homes, forced out of that 32-kilometer zone that he is planning to establish, and replace the Kurdish residents with Arab refugees, whom we are told there are 3 million of them in Turkey. That is the idea, that is the intention, That's what Erdogan is trying to do.